source for Warhammer Underworlds and under 30 individual but incredibly clear steps in the great plan as laid down by the Slan Star Masters. I'm your host, Davy, and with me, as always, cold-blooded co-host. How are you doing, Phil?
Hey, I'm doing all right, Davy.
And with us today, we have a special guest coming from 14 hours in the future. We have RG. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, thanks.
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking Starblood Stalkers, and specifically in the context of some of the online events that RG here has played in and triumphed over. So we'll be breaking down his deck, why we think they're in a good spot, and any adjustments and things to be looking for going forward. Context: it is just past the new year. We still don't know anything new about Black Powder, but we're looking forward to hearing about that big piratey ogre. We'll kind of jump through some of our early steps here for community shout-outs. Anybody got anything they want to shout out as far as content you've heard in the community or some such? I can say I just listened to Path to Glory. They are back after not quite, but close to a couple months off. Well deserved after that huge flurry of content they crushed out right as Harrow Deep released. But Ahmad's got Nick on, and they kind of break down where they think the meta is and talk about some of the top 8 decks from the Vassal Clash here. Vassal Clash 10. Is that correct? Vassal Clash 10, RG?
Yeah, that's the one. Yep.
Okay. And so if you want another take, you can get theirs. I'm about halfway through it, so I haven't actually got to where they break down your deck yet. So I'll get to listen to their thoughts on this from another perspective. And then I also wanted to give a shout out to Lethenham, who hopped on to give us a little feedback as far as our breakdown, some of our speculation about these. He pointed out some stuff on Discord that I think we'll cover here today. But one of them was that is actually 2 events you participated in Straight Out of Shadespire as a webcam, and that was a Highlander event, which is something we didn't notice. So
Yeah.
the fact that we were marveling that there were no duplicates is less surprising in the context of Straight Out of Shadespire. So.
And I guess while we're on shout-outs, we should shout out to Valentine for organising that. So
yeah, absolutely. That's cool.
Appreciate that from him.
All the people who've been keeping stuff organized.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, we know you've been doing some online events. What else have you been up to, RG?
No, that's it. Kids
That's
work.
about it. That's enough. That's a healthy dose. Am I understanding correctly? The Vassal Clash itself, there was one day of best out of 3 play, and then a cut to top 4, and those were kind of scheduled as possible, or how is that?
Yeah, so the first day is best of 3, 4 rounds of best of 3, and generally the second day is the top 4 or 8 cut.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think many people played the second day in this case. And at the end of the first cut, I actually came in 5th, so I didn't make the top 4. And somehow I think Mad Angry couldn't schedule a game with Heretic, so he dropped out, which is why I ended up playing Heretic again.
And that's not unheard of for that to have seen. We've seen that happen in some physical events as well. Mad Angry was running Crushes, is that correct?
He was, yeah.
Okay. Right.
But he's in South Korea, so his time difference is even worse than mine.
Oh, man.
All right. We'll loop back around to that in a sec. Phil, what have you been up to?
Well, not a whole lot since we last spoke. Just been doing holiday stuff for the most part, but we are going to be jumping back into our community league here coming up this next week, and I'm looking forward to wrapping that up. We've got just a couple weeks left, so we're going to be into the finals here pretty soon, and that should be pretty fun to see what shakes out.
Yeah, I unfortunately am working for both the next one of those, so you're gonna have
No,
to be
no.
the banner bearer for us
Yeah.
on that. Um, but it I'm at the bottom looking up in that thing anyway, so
Sure.
but glad we're able to do that. All right, but let's jump into it. We're here for the Starblood Stalkers. So, uh, RG, we've talked a little bit about those events. Uh, can you give us a quick breakdown of let's talk in the context of the Vassal Clash. You said 4 rounds, best of 3. What did you play against in that day one before going to the cut?
So day one, I think honestly I had all the, well, in some ways the luck in this. Um, my first opponent was supposed to be uh, Chad. He was playing. He was running the Cunning Crew. He turned up 20 minutes late, so
Mm,
I basically got a bye for the first round.
okay.
Um, my second opponent was Etienne, and he was playing the Reavers. So as you can imagine, that was a very bloody affair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He was running things like Berserker Rage, Punching Up, and Mighty Swing. All those good killing lizards cards.
Yeah. Yeah. A bunch of knockout blows. That's the kind of game that's kind of over quick one way or the other. Often, I don't know if that was your experience.
Well, we did have 3 games. I won
Oh,
the
okay.
first 18-17, so it was really close. The second he won, and the third game was 21 all.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
So won by standing on an objective. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
All
was
right.
really close.
That's cool. Uh,
Um, so the next matchup was against Crushers. That was Mad Angry,
okay.
uh, and it was basically just played 2 games with him. Uh, 2 games, yes, and yeah, I won both. So
Okay. Was his crushes? Was it a brawler, or was it also looking to stand on some objectives?
so he had a bit of a mix. So in his deck, he had a bit. I think he had scant resources and making a statement and
Hmm.
things like that as well. So got it, boss. What now? What he had as well. So it was
So,
a bit of a mix of both.
so got it, boss, being a surge for holding one in enemy territory, and what now is for a surge for holding two. Basically, the old hidden
Yeah,
purpose. Okay.
yep. Those are the ones.
All
So
right.
he had a bit of a mix of both. Yeah, I guess making a statement's a bit hard for him to score against me. I did talk to him through the game, and he said surprisingly he scored that a few times during the tournament. So
Mm,
I guess when everyone's running scant resources and flipping everything back over, making a statement's a bit easy. But then the next one, I played Heretics Rothgorn,
mm,
and yeah, I think he smashed me a little bit.
yeah.
So we played 2 games, and he won both. And we were at that point the only 2, I guess, undefeated players in the
I see.
tournament.
Mhm.
So after losing that put me into 5th place for the full tally. And when Mad Angry then dropped, because I think he made it to 4th, then I had to play Heretics Rothcorn again.
Oh,
So
right. So back to back against Hrothgorn.
and that
Wow.
was pretty scary. So
Were there, so this is this I imagine maintains the rules of a physical event where you're not changing your deck between rounds. So what kind of adjustments did you make coming in, knowing that you just gotten beat 0-2?
so I guess there was a few things you learned during the first games, and I guess I think my first game with him, he just charged directly into Kixie Taka and killed him.
All right.
so, so that was probably my bad. I hit him a little bit better, and he had this good plan away that as soon as he drops the trap, if you have a skink nearby, he'll hold on to hypnotic buzz and push you straight in. So I think both games he got me with that. So I was quite wary, I guess, the next game of not allowing those type of little things. And then, yeah, if you drop the trap, I'll just jump away or something like that. But I think the biggest impact, and probably what did allow me to win against him the second time, is Sawtooth Net.
And now Soultooth Net, for somebody who might not be familiar, lay that one out for us real quick.
So it's a range 2, 3 sword, 1 damage attack. If this attack action succeeds, give the target 1 charge token. You can reroll 1 dice in the attack action if the target has 1 or more moved charge tokens. After making this attack, discard this card. So it's 1 damage, and they get a charge token. So games 2 and 3, I hit him with a Sawtooth Net, probably round 1 or 2. So really early on, and it stopped him from inspiring for an extra round, for instance, which is quite big for Rothgorn.
Absolutely.
With an extra round.
Because if it stops him from inspiring, then even as he's sitting there locked down, it means the rest of the fighters are, even for what little they do, they're still operating at a little bit under strength.
Yeah.
And not only locking out Rothgorn, but often those decks will have a ton of cards that are put in there in order to leverage him. So then he's sitting on cards. If he's got something like Commanding Stride, it's basically not doing a lot for him because he's got a charge token sitting on that guy. So you're locking out the figure, and you're locking out a bunch of cards for a round.
Yeah, he definitely had Commanding Stride coming after me. So we did go to another 3 games. We went to 3 games in the final. He won the first. Second, I won because of Sawtooth Net, I would say, just locking him out for an entire round. And I think the second round, Otterpatel also hit him with his blow darts. So gave him a move token. So 1 round of charge token, 1 round of move token really slowed him down.
Oh yeah, that's brutal.
And the last game, again, hit him with the Sawtooth Net, I think beginning of first or second round, which just delayed his inspiring. But even so, he was able to come back, and that game was 19-19.
Ooh, another one for standing on an objective.
And the worst part is, I mean, in his case, he charged me with Luggett Thwack. So he charged me with Luggett and Thwack. I had a little skink on an objective, and I think with one of his things with Luggett and Thwack is if you miss, or if there are fewer successes in the attack roll than the defense roll, you can push the target 1 hex.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had greater than my successes or less than my successes, he would have pushed me. But we both rolled nothing.
Oh no.
So that was.
I think there's that scenario, or if he rolls 1 success and you roll 1 crit. There's very few circumstances where Luggett and Thwack don't move you off of where you are. Well, that's got to be heartbreaking.
Oh, exactly. So, yeah.
Who did you get to earn a game with in the finals then? What did you line up against?
So then I got to play a Graham or Compact with his head crackers.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously he's an amazing player. So the last time I played him was in one of the Vassal League finals, and he absolutely destroyed me. But that was his aggressive headcracker deck, which is what I expected. But he came in with a hold objective headcracker deck, which
interesting.
which was it was very interesting.
Yeah.
But it probably it probably was countered very well by my deck. So I think initially he chose to take the 3 objectives, and I longboarded him. So yeah, I guess he couldn't come. Well, he was just going for the objectives, and he didn't come in and charge. Well, he with all these orcs like he would do in an aggressive deck.
Yeah.
But with cards like, I guess, confusion and things like that, you can flip onto the objectives, helping score those dominant position type cards, and deny his scoring, for instance. But yeah, that game only went to 2 games. The second game, he started with him stealing stealing my first glory with what's that card?
Daylight Robbery.
Daylight Robbery.
Oh no.
And it was the worst because I had Lion Weight, and I just needed 1 upgrade so I can score to put a quarry upgrade onto someone so I could score.
Yeah.
So I couldn't score anything in the end of the first round.
Oh man.
And he just took off. But I think the second and third round, I think his dice just left him. And again, I had some really good luck, especially when he's charging with was it Tooth Dagger for 5 dice. He gets 2 crits against Kixitaka, and I roll 2 crits back. And then charge Kixitaka or someone and roll 3 crits.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you can't change the dice sometimes. But that was a really, really close game. I think if the dice sort of didn't betray him, basically, I think he did a mighty swing with Tooth Dagger and all his dice, and he didn't hit anything both times or something like that. Something ridiculous. So he probably would have taken that game just if the dice helped him a little bit more, because it was only like 15-13 in the end of it, so it was fairly close.
And that's no joke. He like you said, he's played that warband a bunch. He wrote one of my favorite articles of in recent memory. I think he was up on Set the Tempo. Did an article about the Headcrackers mob. It will now be about 1 season out of date, but there's some really good thoughts in there that I think are worth reading regardless. So
yeah, definitely. I did read that one, yeah. Especially after he smashed me last time I won. But yeah, he's a very good player. He knows what he's doing. So
yeah. All right. Well, so that's kind of your route through, so people have an idea of where some of this is coming from. We're gonna wind it all the way back now, and go to when you were getting ready for this event. What made you decide that the warband you were going to take was going to be Starblood? Is this a thing where you've been playing these for a while, or is it more of you thought they're the right fit for the current meta? What were your thoughts there?
Honestly, I was playing. Who's the Sea Elves?
The Soul Raid.
The Soul Raid. That's the one.
Yeah.
And I was playing them in the league, and actually no, I was playing the Starblood Stalkers up until Harrow Deep hit, and then I switched over to the Soul Raid. But I wasn't doing as good as I would have liked, and if I'd done maybe a little bit better, then I would have stuck with the Soul Raid, to be honest. But then I kind of went back to the drawing board, and I kind of had a look at the cards in Harrow Deep as a whole, and had a bit of a think as to what I really wanted to do, because I couldn't at that time see an objective holding deck doing anything. But then thinking about it, with the disappearance of Mischievous Spirits, Restless Prize, Nightmare in the Shadows, Distraction, end of phase hold objective cards are really difficult to stop. So my deck is basically mostly end of round objective cards, just holding objectives,
Hmm.
and all the surges are just something easy things. For instance, but yeah, on that thought, I also didn't want to go on an aggressive attacking warband either because everyone else was doing it. So I just wanted to
Sure.
change it up,
Try
really.
something else.
So
I mean, almost like a little bit of a meta counter pick. It can be a thing. Like you said, there's if nobody's expecting people to be holding objectives, then you may see less of that disruption. They're already thin on the ground, like you said, with the distraction rotating out, and they may be even more so, depending. So
and also, I mean, I just like the Lizmen, so I really
sure,
enjoy playing them. So
Phil's got
Yeah.
you there. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, let's get into it. Let's get into the Warband as a whole. Phil, some of the just briefly, you want to hit us with some of those core mechanics
Yeah.
that they have. That if you haven't played Starblood, you should keep in mind that this is the context which the Warband is going from.
Yeah. So I'd say core mechanics, so things that are sort of shared throughout the entire warband. There's nothing that's truly universal, but there's two things that they have that are fairly common across most fighters. So for their inspiration, all of the skinks inspire from holding 3 objectives at the end of an activation. So there is a bit of a timing thing that you can do there to block that for a little while, but now that we have delve, it slows it down a little bit. But basically, if they get on 3, all the skinks are flipping. And then Clackchuck, the big guy, he just has to get a hit. So it's very similar to Magor's Fiends, where it's just land a hit, then you're inspired. So he is likely to be a little more aggressive, or at least he can be. You can kind of use him as a distraction too. And then they also have the ability Skittish on 3 of the skinks. So it's all the ones that are not the chameleon or your leader. And after an opponent's power step, you can use a reaction to push them away from an enemy fighter that's within 2 hexes. It doesn't specify that it has to be away from all, so you can pick which one you want, so you can have your move be as advantageous as it needs to be. You can kind of set yourself up to do some silly stuff with this. I think Skittish is probably the thing to keep in mind the most with this warband, because that repositioning can be a real bear if you're not prepared for it.
I'd say it's maybe my least favorite thing about playing against them because I get a headache trying to think of all the ways that Skittish is going to burn me. Do you find Skittish
Yeah.
coming up a lot for you, RG?
I use it all the time. I love it. I love the mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really the sort of secret sauce for these guys. If you can't take advantage of it, you're probably not playing them as well as you could be. So
Yeah, 100% agree
probably
with that.
something to be thinking about. And then the only other thing that I would mention is that they do have 4 hunters and 1 innate quarry, and that is pretty rare. Innate quarry is not something that we see very often, so they are likely to be taking advantage of that. We already heard, RG, you were mentioning that you were trying to take advantage of having lion weight with that innate quarry and then an upgrade. Unfortunately, couldn't get that upgrade out. But yeah, so something you'll likely see is that they'll be running quarry tech.
Yeah. Yeah. The innate quarry is very rare. It's just them and the Dread Pageant, I believe. I don't think anyone else.
None that I can think of outside of those 2.
Everyone that Prothcorn's playing against, but
Well, sure, yeah, of course.
yeah. All right. That's kind of the overall, and then Phil, give us a 1-sentence breakdown maybe on each of these fighters, and then we'll jump into the deck here.
Yeah. All right. So you got Kixitaka, the leader. So this guy's special deal is that he's got an action to flip a feature token that's within 3 hexes, or he can deal 1 damage to a fighter who's adjacent to a feature token within 3 hexes, so you can kind of get some sneaky ping damage in there, although I don't really ever end up using that, but I'm sure it could come up.
What about you, or did you? How often do you find yourself using that special action?
I don't think I've ever used it, actually. I
Yeah.
keep reminding myself to use it, but I forget about it. So
Oh man,
Yeah.
it's funny because I see it on the card, and you always, you see some ability like that, and I don't know. For me, my instinct is to think about like the best case scenario. I'm like, oh man, somebody all stacked up with defense, and they're right there, and you just ping them. But I guess, yeah, I guess it's corner enough that you won't necessarily remember it. But
Yeah.
who else
I
we?
guess
Okay.
the only other thing is just to note that he does have 2 different attack profiles. There's one that's range 2 with his stick, that's the better one, and then he also has a range 3 shot as well that's quite accurate. So
Mm.
sometimes if all he needs is a push, that range 3 attack can come out, and that's actually pretty accurate, so it can be a bit surprising. Then we got the big guy, Clacktrock. He just hits hard. He's got a 3 damage attack base, and then he also has a reaction attack that he can always take after his activation. So sometimes you're just dealing with extra bites all over the place, sort of like the wolves a bit. But that's about it. He's just sort of a bruiser. He's slower than the rest of the warband, though, so something to keep in mind. Then we got Huachi. He's the spear skink. He's sort of your best skink attacker, I guess, of the 3 little dangle bro skinks. He's the one of the 2 that's got a shield, so he's on block defense. You got Tak, who's got the blow dart, who's not a chameleon. Not much else to say about that. Just he's a blow dart. It's not very good. It's not very accurate, but you do what you can. And then Shepik, the other shield guy. Again, not a whole lot else to say about him. Those are the 3 that have skittish. So if you don't know their names, those are the 3. And then Autopodle, the chameleon skink, he is base 2 dodge goes up to 3, so he is very hard to hit. And his blow dart attack, as we already mentioned, does give a move token on a success. So it can be backbreaking if he manages to hit, but he only hits on crits. So something else to keep in mind there.
Mm.
That's the warband.
There's the breakdown, and as we often do with decks, we start by talking objectives, and you've already kind of given us the core philosophy of your objective deck, which is that you're going to score in the end phase for holding objectives, and then you've got some surges to kind of make that happen along the way. So I'm going to run down your end phase objectives here. We're actually going to start with that since that's your stated, and then we'll go from there. So you've got scant resources. I think I'm going to start with that. That has gotten its value has gone up, and we've talked about that some in a previous episode. And it's a hybrid because it can be scored in 2 ways. It's the if all objectives are held on the board, whether it's by yours or somebody else, or if all glory points are spent. Most of the time, I see it being scored with the former. Did you find much often that it was scored by the latter? And then how often did you find people like playing against this with, flipping something and stepping away, or getting a beast onto something and having them stand on it? So they've flipped it, but don't count as holding it because they have that beast status.
I think everyone's trying to score it. So everyone's trying to flip it, onto the objectives onto cover hexes, to gloom hexes. So to give them the extra defense as well. So I think it's such an easy score unless you, for instance, kill someone. Because what I've found is most people, before they leave an objective for a charge or something, they actually flip it and then they charge.
Mm.
And most people actually had it in their decks. I think that I was against, apart from maybe the Reavers.
Mm-hmm.
So if everyone's going for it, then you're going to get it eventually.
It is. It feels a little like was it Escalation back in the Shadespire days, which was score 2 if 3 upgrades had been put out during the round, where it was just everybody's playing it, and you were just trying to figure out the timing on it. So
Exactly.
it might be a thing that we see rotate out of more decks as we see more cards, and then people have some options, some maybe better options out there where they say, okay, I'm going to take something else, and then I will try to deny it because I've got something else good for me.
Mm.
You do have a couple good standbys here. Dominant Position is a defining card. This is the hold more for 2. And then Path to Victory, a great one, which is hold 2 objectives and have one enemy fighter have gone out of action in the previous round. So those just feel like real staples. Dominant Position is kind of this era's supremacy in early Underworlds. Supremacy is what you took if you wanted to try to score off of holding objectives in the end phase, and this feels like that. Any other thoughts on those two?
No, not really.
Did you ever struggle to find that kill for Path to Victory? Did it ever feel like it put you in a weird spot, or pretty solid?
Probably. I actually can't remember.
Fair enough.
If you against crushes, I guess it's hard. So I probably would have just ditched it and not thought about it again. Yeah. No, I can't actually remember, to be honest.
Fair.
But generally, I think most games I score most of the cards anyway. But yeah.
Here's one that you sort of uniquely adapted to with this is lie in wait, and you referenced that earlier. And this is a hybrid score. If you have 3 or more friendly hunters are holding objectives, or 2 or more friendly fighters are holding objectives, and each is a quarry. So this is Autopodal plus 1 upgrade gets you there.
Yeah.
And what I like about this, so there's always a lot of debate about this card. If you have 3 people holding, but only 2 are quarries, where does that leave you? How often do you find yourself scoring it with a hunter variation? Probably a little less because holding 3 can be pretty tricky. But
I think I did score it with a hunter variation once in the tournament, but generally, I think I scored it every single time with a quarry mechanic, which is obviously much easier. And cards like Outrun Death and all the quarry mechanic are 4 upgrades for helping quarries. Is providing quarry mechanic is makes it much easier to score.
Yeah,
I was actually worried about taking this card in the beginning, but it was quite easy to score. So I have no regrets now. So,
and even in Harrow Deep, it's easier than it was in Dire Chasm, because if you do have somebody who's not fulfilling the criteria, if you manage to get 2 quarries, but you also ended up with somebody else on one, you can just delve that over to make sure that one's protected. So that keeps you safe there.
Yeah, no, I think even the way I scored the hunter mechanic one was putting the Soultooth net onto Clacktrock.
Oh, nice. All right.
and using Burst from the Shadows to push him onto an objective.
Oh, I love that. That's
so that type of thing was used, quite a bit to actually push Clacktrock into positions where you wouldn't expect, because suddenly he can just push up to 2, and then he's right in your face.
Right. Yeah, brutal. You've got Balance the Cosmic Equation. This is a hybrid score that's in the end phase. If there are 2 or more enemy fighters out of action, or the warband holds more objectives than any other warband. So hybrid, but it's 2 things that you are kind of trying to do. You're trying to get some kills there. What I like about this kind of card, the payoff is only 1 glory, but you could be playing against a Swarm Warband, in which case relatively easy, or it just plays into what you're trying to do already with Dominant Position. This is a Starblood only. So was this was this an early inclusion, or did you look at any other options on this for this slot?
Well, that one, I kept flipping between different cards, like the Greater Hunt, having
Mm,
4 or more hunters, but it just ran with the story of the objectives I'm trying to score.
hmm.
Just hold objectives in the end phase, so it just made sense, I guess.
Sure. Your last end phase one is Underdog, and this one is pretty familiar to folks. It's a 2 glory. You'll score it if your opponent has 3 more objectives completed than you, or if your opponent has the primacy counter. Did that feel fairly reliable, or was it more just in there as a hey, things are not going ideal, and I get to catch up? You do have the skinks in there that may or may not make it.
Yeah, it's kind of both.
Okay.
It works in that kind of way. I guess
Sure.
you score it most of the time, but yeah, because I'm normally getting killed, being little skinks,
Hmm.
and the way I play this deck, I'm not really generally attacking. So all the skinks are just sitting back trying to hold objectives, and Clacktrock's basically the enforcer, trying to get rid of the enemy.
Yeah.
And then maybe Huachi comes in, or Kixitaka as a backup, I guess. So yeah.
So we'll run through your surges here, and then we'll talk what other things you might have considered some outliers. So you have what I'm seeing is a lot of surges that are real easy to score.
Yeah.
Uh, so I see instinctive tactics. This is a surge for having after your second or subsequent reaction in a round, and given that you have skittish, Clacktrock's bite, and we haven't really gotten into your power cards, but there's plenty of ways to generate reactions from the warband in general. There is Astromatrix alignment, which is flip a feature token in enemy territory, and by feature token, it could even just be you could flip a gloom over onto a gloom. Um, so you could be doing this with that ability, or just by standing on something. Everything to prove, which is well established that this is one of the best surges in the game. So right now we're on 3 for 3 that don't need a whole lot. Contest at equals. This is the surge after a failed attack, and it can be from the enemy or from yourself if there's the same number of successes in each of the attack and defense rolls. So those 4 seem right off the bat kind of if they're not going smoothly, then something kind of crazy is going on. Did you I imagine those at first glance those look like the smoothest of any of them for you. It's really really hard for them to be denied, and they often don't take a ton of effort or none from you.
Well, unless I can't pick up any upgrades, you can't deny silver lining either.
Sure.
But no, I think honestly, all of them were really really easy to score.
Mm.
I mean, Reckless Swing, I was a bit worried about taking it initially because I didn't actually want to go and charge. But you couple the Reckless Swing with Dark Sacrifice, Amiga's offering, maybe just a sidestep, or if you've got an upgrade like a Impressive Bulk, or Unfeeling Resilience, or Great Fortitude, it just slows down the enemy, because let's say they got 2 damage to do 2 damage, then they have to attack you twice, kill you, or use Great Strength or something like that.
Sure. So
But
Reckless Swing being where you it's a surge for 1 and you have to make an attack where the enemy has one more supporting fighter than you. So
that's the one.
that it being something that theoretically is putting you in a tough position. Did you ever find it was a challenge to make sure you had a fighter with a range 1 to score this? You just have some different ranges in this, or is Clacktrock always just kind of reliably there for you?
No, I think one of my games against Etienne, I wasted a distraction pulling Garrick, I think, closer to Kixitaka to score
Uh-huh.
this card. He's a range two, and then someone pointed out, "Hey,
Oh
yeah." And
boy.
then by that time, I had no one that was range one left. But all other times was fairly easy. I think
Yeah.
unless you get it maybe right at the end of the game, that's probably the only time when it's more difficult to score.
And then I guess the other one I wanted to specifically, you mentioned Silver Lining, still feeling pretty reliable for you. I find often newer players when they're building decks will find this card kind of counter to it or confusing. How often do you is it just in there for those hands where I drew heavy on upgrades? This will help dig me out of there, or do you ever find yourself like drawing specifically towards it? Like
Yeah,
I need to fish for one more upgrade to get this.
every time,
Yeah.
every time. That's probably the card that I struggled with the most to
Mm,
score out of all of these Silver Lining. So it was just trying to draw cards.
sure.
Well, but it wasn't too bad, I guess, because most of the time, especially with the new board changes,
Mm.
everyone gets their little share of a longboard. So so
That
I've
gives
got
you something to do when you're longboarded. Yeah.
and I guess I can just draw some extra cards as well while I'm waiting,
Yeah, sure.
which helps out with that. So I think that's kind of what happened in most of my games. Just sit back and draw some cards.
So Phil, you're a resident Starblood guy. You looked this over, and it's a deck that's done quite well. But did you have any thoughts on cards that you would have were surprised to not see, or curious about their absence, or just about the thought process on how we landed on one and not another?
Yeah, I think most of all of this makes plenty of sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with any of these choices. I guess one thing that I almost always include, and I think I know why you didn't
It's a
take it,
great
but I'm
plan.
curious.
Hey,
The
there he
great
is.
plan, yeah, yeah. Why not the great plan?
I love that card, but don't I can't get the balance right of hybrids and duels to put it in.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it. So basically, that's when I think Lion Weight came. I just swapped
Mm,
it for that. So,
Hmm.
but I don't know if there's any other duels that are easy to score.
it was
Shout
funny
out.
because the first thing I did when I looked at your deck was I kind of scrolled down to see Underworlds DB has the breakdown of this many hybrids, this many duels. I was like, oh, only one duel. He's really being risky with the great plan. And then scrolled up, I'm like, it's not even there. What? Yeah.
Yeah. So the one that I'm running right now to try and keep it in is Primal Display, but then you have to be a little more aggressive because you do have to get that kill and you have to get primacy from the kill.
Mm,
So not super reliable. You're having to go more flex.
Hmm.
One that could be used that I also have a question for you if you've considered the card, because this is one that was actually suggested to us from a few episodes back, or maybe it was just someone making an offhanded comment. But Path of Order is a new objective just for Order, which is a duel where you score in the end phase if your warband holds 2 or more objectives and 2 or more enemy fighters are out of action. So it's like Path to Victory, but the timing's a little different on the kills.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I probably wouldn't be too keen. The whole point of the deck is run away and hide,
Yeah,
and I don't want to be out aggressively trying to kill things if I can.
mm,
right.
So I don't want for instance, Clacktrock to die before I've scored Path to Victory,
mm.
Yep.
or anything like that. So yeah,
Yeah, and I
maybe.
can see that one being pretty challenging if you're up against crushes, like getting 2 crushes dead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
really
Makes this one a
tough.
really
you'd have to
tough.
change the whole deck if you want to put
Sure.
that in, for instance.
Yeah. I mean, Path of Order is one that I have not included yet. It's one that I want to try just to see how it plays, but my gut feeling is that it's going to be tough. So I haven't used it either.
And
Um
By the
Yeah,
third
go ahead.
round, you might not have two skinks left to hold objectives.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You might not be able to hold two. Um, the only other thing, and I saw this in your the other tournament list that you had making a statement in there, and I've been messing around with making a statement a little bit as well. Why not in this deck, but in that one?
I didn't think about it at all.
Oh, okay.
But I probably, on second thought, I probably wouldn't have put it in anyway in a best of three, because then
Mm,
people
Yeah.
would start countering it, and I definitely wouldn't have scored it against some of the players I went against anyway.
mm,
Hmm.
But because Straight Out of Shadespire is a best of one, I put it in.
Ah.
I only sort of realised about it when I was playing Mad Agri. He had it in his deck, and that's the only time I thought about it.
Yeah, yeah. I've just been, toying with it a little because it was like, oh, hold all of the objectives. Well, if your opponent only has the one because you flipped one, maybe it's easy. But I think people have caught on to this at this point. I'm probably going to be rotating it out, like you say, in best of three, especially. Even if they don't know about it, they're only going to get caught off guard once, right?
Yeah,
So you can't
yeah.
rely on that. But I think those are the only things that those are the only ones that I thought are other things to consider. And like you say, you would probably have to change the play style a little bit. And I think it is worth mentioning that like this warband can be pretty flexible in how aggressive they are. You can go completely passive and just hold objectives, or you can be a very middle of the road mix, or you can lean a little more heavily into using some of the things like punching up and stuff to try and make the skinks effective missiles.
Mm. Yeah, and that's what I did last Vassal Clash. I went more, into little missile skinks,
mm.
but I just tried something different this time. So
Yeah.
So that's where the glory is coming from, and that total glory count on the deck is 17. Is that correct?
yeah,
Yep.
Okay. The traditional is that you lay down your objectives and you support them with your power cards. Uh, One thing that jumps out right away is it's a 22 card power deck. Um, and I was about to ask about why the extra, but then I see right away you've got two sources of card draw. You got Duel of Wits, important because it's a reaction, it can help you out there, and then Dark Sacrifice, and this is one that's out of Arena Mortis, right? This is a play after a gambit or attack action that takes a friendly fighter out of action, and you draw two power cards. So you have two reactions, each drawing two power cards to kind of fill your hand up, makes Silver Lining a little potentially easier, and
mm.
also makes Instinctive Tactics a little easier. Is that a philosophy you do in general? Is go up to 22, take a couple of card draw things, or
um,
is that
it,
how did
it,
you land on that as your
it
kind of
it
quantities?
completely depends on the story of the objectives,
Mm,
uh, and how I'm playing the deck. In this case, because I'm hanging back, drawing
mm,
cards, holding objectives, I tend to run out of cards at the end of the game.
mm,
So if I had 20 cards, I'd most games run out of cards, and the worst thing is running out of a side. Needing a sidestep when you don't have one at the end of the game.
sure.
So one you did miss is, I guess, Silent Ring. So
Oh,
if
yeah.
if you're drawing four cards from Duel of Wits and Dark Sacrifice, and maybe a couple from Silent Ring, and during the game I'm drawing a couple of cards anyway,
Hmm.
I end up running out. So
Hmm.
so
Sure.
that's one of the philosophies of 22 cards in the specific deck. The other is, I guess, when you think of the point of running 10 and 10, it's statistically you get the better chance of getting the better cards. For
Hmm.
instance, if you had ready for action, for instance, in the deck, statistically you had better chance of getting ready for action. But
Hmm.
in this case, I don't care what cards I get. Any cards will help me score what I want. So
Sure.
it doesn't matter. You know,
Right. So your important thing, you feel that the cards in here are strong enough that it doesn't matter that they're diluted because the strength is kind of universal throughout, and it's important to have resources throughout the entirety of the game rather than to run
that's
shy at
probably what I'm
the.
trying to say in a better way.
Oh, I mean, you talked specifically about coming up short when you're looking for that crucial sidestep, and you have to that effect, you have sidestep, which we all know and love. You have heated instinct, which is sidestep, but just better if you happen to be a quarry. And we can already see down below you got some extra quarry tech. You've got symbiote's call, and this is the it's a sidestep that lets you step onto a feature token with an alternate thing of flipping an adjacent feature token. Burst from the Shadows, which is choose up to 2 friendly hunters and push each of those 2 hexes, which is crazy, especially since, like you said, you can make Clacktrock into a hunter. Um, so those are your friendly pushes. And then I guess I would pause and say Symbiote's Call there. Is that how often did you, was it almost always a sidestep for you? Did you ever find yourself using it with the flip option?
Um, a bit of both.
Mm,
Honestly, that's one of the better cards in my opinion. In this deck, it helped me quite a lot.
mm,
You know, you can use it in so many different ways. If you want to, let's say sidestep back onto a cover hex out of range of an opponent, or just onto a cover hex to add the extra defense, or if you team it up with Beast Trail and sidestep onto another, or flip an objective when an opponent's on it. All of those, I use them in all those
mm.
situations, and not to mention the the most important situation is just to move on to an objective at the end of the turn to score my end of the round objectives.
Sure.
So
I
yeah,
Yeah, one of the things I like in theory about this one, especially though, is it puts a little extra mental pressure on the opponent where they can't just say, okay, I'm just going to delve at the last possible moment. They have to be like, well, if Symbiote's Call is out there and I delve at the last possible moment, then I might not end up, if they're counting on holding 2 for Path to Victory or of their own or something like that, and they wait too long to delve. So it just puts a little extra pressure knowing that there's, besides Kijitaka's flip, there's that one as well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, I think a great one, since a lot of people are fighting over dominant position and such, is Confusion. You've got that in there. Was that an early inclusion or something you came to after a while?
No, that was one of the first ones.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
Yep.
the last game, the last Vessel Clash, I didn't bring it, and I after the clash, that was one of my lessons learned, for instance,
Hmm.
and I just put it straight back in. You know, it's like a game changer. When it works, and
Mm,
other times it does nothing. But for instance, against Compaq, he was jumping on objectives, coming
mm,
forward, but
hmm.
I think twice I was able to flip with Confusion, deny his glory, and score my own, for instance. So it really helped out a lot. Against Rothkorn, it's a little bit different, but yeah, it's
Phil,
still.
have you been including Confusion in yours?
Oh, yes, definitely. As soon as I noted that like Delve was going to be important for everybody because they're going to be wanting to be holding feature tokens for defense,
Mm,
I knew just from a denial standpoint that I was going to need Confusion
hmm.
because I needed a way to get onto those objectives, and you don't have a huge amount of enemy pushes anymore.
Hmm.
Mm,
You can kind of manufacture them, but a Confusion just gets you both in one go.
Sure.
And then as mentioned, RG already outlined a lot of the other good uses for it, and it's like this card sort of fell out of favor for a while, but I think maybe it probably shouldn't have. It's such a strong uh, like board state change to, if somebody cares about being on that token and you can put your fighter on it instead, that's gonna really mess up their plans.
mm.
Well, I think you hit it right there. Is it's if somebody cares about being on tokens, and I think in seasons past, there was a fair percentage of warbands that didn't care. But
Hmm.
now everybody wants to be there for one reason or the other. Either you want to be there to hold it, or you want to be there for the defensive bonus.
Yeah, yeah,
And so there's much fewer cases where it's a dead card, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and it gives you another way, another combo in with Beast Trail, which you have in there. So you could Beast Trail next to somebody, and then confusion onto the objective that they're holding. Beast Trail being a choose one friendly hunter or quarry with no move or charge tokens that is in an edge hex, and then put them in another edge hex and give them a move token. Now that objectives are, barring any movement shenanigans, never on the edge anymore. It's not quite as bonkers strong as it was. You used to always be able to hop in there, but between your skitter and your other power cards, I imagine you kind of make good use of this. You got plenty of hunters. You have a quarry in there, so it was this served you well throughout.
I think it's a great card.
How
Just
often did you talked about running away a lot with this warband? You often use it for that as well.
I like to use it to, I guess, obviously get to the other side of the board, but running away in a sense is, I guess, let's say against aggressive opponents, you scatter your skinks all over the board, so they have to
Mm-hmm.
choose: do they go this way or this way? Not lumping them in a little corner. But yeah, Beast Trail allows that easy access right to the back of the board. For instance, if Crushers are coming at you or Wrathcorns coming at you, you could just sort of jump to the back and then, possibly confusion onto an objective.
Sure.
But yeah, it's also use it in some instances for the reaction. So you can beast trail behind someone in their power step, and after their power step, just jump back or skitter. And you
Mm-hmm.
can skitter back just to help your instinctive tactics.
Oh, sure. Get close enough to skitter and trigger that. It's worth the glory.
Yeah, yeah. So normally I'll have Tok in the back of the warband, right at the back, just sitting there. I don't really move him the entire game. He just waits. When Beast Troll comes, he'll just appear somewhere else. Generally speaking,
Yeah.
it's not always him, but yeah, it's mostly him.
Let's see. We talked about those distractions being rare, but not when you're Starblood, because you have Wanchi's device, which is distraction but better.
Yeah.
The So at its core, it is just distraction, where one of the options is to pick one enemy fighter and push them one hex. But the other is that you can have them pick. Was it 3 of their fighters, and they have to push each of them? They get to pick the direction, but they all have to get pushed.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So the opponent picks 3 fighters of their warband and then has to push them 1 hex each.
Oof.
Yeah, and if they have 3 or fewer, obviously, then they just push their whole warband, which is rough.
Especially if they're on objectives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real heartbreaker. I mean, it's nice to have a version of one of the best cards in the game, only better. So.
Yep.
And then I think the only outlier that we haven't talked about in your gambits is Omega's Offering, and this is choose a fighter and put 1 glory on them, and then when they die, you get to have that glory. Who were you putting this on, Skinks, or were you putting this on Clacktrock when he was out in a vulnerable position, or who did this most often go on, do you think?
It generally changes, but most of the time it's on Huachi,
Mm.
and he's generally the one charging you for the reckless swing, for instance.
Okay.
I guess any skink that's in danger, you just chuck it on them, and it kind of deters the opponent from attacking skinks in their territory. Let's say I run Huachi into their territory, put Omega's Offering on. They kind of leave him alone a little bit because they don't want to give me any glory. But then, then I'm sitting on an objective, in the end phase scoring glory anyway. So
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
just gives that extra tough decision for the opponent to make. Does he?
Sure.
Does
Yeah.
he?
And then
Yeah.
they're stuck. I mean, best case scenario, for you is they maybe swing at them. You get omegas, you get everything to prove an underdog or something like that. Like it can feel rough on the other side. Uh,
Well, yeah. Sometimes you have reckless swing. You charge in,
oh,
you chuck Omega's offering on, but you have Dark Sacrifice, for instance, in your hand,
oh man.
and everything to prove. So you're scoring a lot, drawing extra cards, and it kind of worked out really well. Maybe I was just lucky.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a solid trade. Uh, Phil, did you have any thoughts on cards that you thought or you like to include, and so we figure out the thought process behind leaving off or including in?
Yeah. So I guess one that I've often used that I don't see that you have is Center of Attention, and I am curious as to why no love for Center of Attention.
I love that card. It's just too many cards.
Yeah. Right.
I guess the only one that I would possibly switch for that is Amiga's offering, but
Hmm.
yeah, or maybe I didn't think about it at the time. I don't know. It's a good card.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily see anything that's an obvious cut. So I don't disagree that there's like, it's just tough. There's so many good power cards right now. But yeah, I
I
mean,
think I just wanted more options to annoy the opponent for reckless swing, for instance, and to deter
right.
them to killing certain skinks that were holding objectives. I do play Center of Tension quite a lot, but not in this deck.
Yeah. Uh, two others that I've sort of sometimes used, kind of go back and forth on, and I think we already know why, because you said you are just trying to play passive, but punching up and inspired attack both work pretty well in this warband, but like you said, not playing aggressively, so it makes sense to not be including those.
I did have
Two that
those.
I haven't.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
did have both of those in my last deck that I was playing.
Mm-hmm.
But if Huachi dies, then what?
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
I've shockingly found that Jepic, once he's inspired, can do some interesting things with this.
yeah,
You can
but
go
then
up to like 4 or 5 dice, and
when you got to inspire him, and it's a bit harder
yeah,
to inspire them now, and that's
yep,
why I kind of went towards the more passive rather than the more aggressive, because you needed to inspire him
yep,
to have the benefit. Otherwise, it's just he's charging in with, for instance, punching up for 2 damage.
yeah. It's not great.
It's yeah, I think I got caught out a couple of times just having those cards in my hand, and I had to discard them. So I stopped using them.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense for your strategy. I guess another staple that I just think I know why it's not there, but I'd like to hear your reasoning. Is Lords of Space and Time?
Too hard.
Yeah,
Have to
yeah,
flip objectives before you use it. It's counterintuitive. I'm already there.
Yeah.
If I'm
yep,
already in that position, then I don't need it.
right.
But I guess you could, but
Yeah, and I think that's where Beast Trail makes more sense now. It used to be just an obvious choice, right? Because it was like, well, yeah, I'm just going to use it to teleport into my opponent's territory. But you just can't do that very much now. Now, one card that can potentially set that up, but I don't think that you'd necessarily want to do that just for that purpose. But and one that I haven't tried yet, but I've been thinking about is Writhing Shadows. So for folks who don't know, and this is a new one, so this one, it lets you either flip a feature token in an empty hex, and it doesn't have any sort of range restrictions. So I think that's what I'm looking at it mostly for. Or you can roll an attack dice for every fighter that's in a cover hex, and on a roll of a smash, you deal 1 damage to that fighter. So
oh,
theoretically, you could just ping a whole bunch of fighters. I think I'd mostly care about using this to flip tokens, though.
Yeah, not even heard about that card.
I my take on it is that it has extra value if you're trying to score surges off of
Yep.
holding objectives, because it can speed that up. And then if you're suspecting, I think if you're doing something like making a statement where you're trying to hold all in enemy territory, or if you're starting to encounter counterplay to scant resources, it lets you kind of flip something that's been left alone
Mm.
um, out there. And basically, I just don't see those cards in by and large in your deck. So it's not the payoff is not there for you in the way that it is for other warbands
Well, it could help
Yeah,
score
or other builds.
Astromatrix alignment.
it
Mm,
sure would. I think that's the thing that I'm looking at it for the most part is it's like play a power card, score Astro Matrix. Like it
Yeah, it's easy.
feels nice. Um, but yeah, so that's one that I had looked at. And then another new one that I haven't tried yet is Shadow Lure. I think this is just generally less useful than Symbiote's
So it's,
Call, but it's one I've been considering where so you have to choose a friendly fighter and you can push them one hex towards the nearest cover hex. So you don't really get to choose which direction you get pushed, but you can probably set that up pretty easily. Or you can pick the nearest feature token that's in an empty hex and move the token one hex towards your fighter. The benefit here, I think, is that you don't have to be adjacent to the hex like you do with Symbiote's Call, but you can't flip, and you can only move the token if it's empty. So it's sort of like, is it good enough? I'm not sure. I don't know if you've looked at it at all.
uh, honestly, I heard it for the first time maybe a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
People were talking about it in the chat. I'm like, what the hell is that card? um,
I,
it sounds good, but yeah, just a little bit weaker. Symbiote's Call. Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
I think you can find yourself in a bad position too with as much cover as there is on the board. That you can end up the fighter you want to push is already standing on a cover hex and therefore can't,
Yep.
just kind of stuck with his feet in the thing that is restricting him from actually pushing. So,
Yeah.
any other gambits that you that were borderline that you thought about including but didn't, that you want to bring up, RG?
not really. I mean, I I put this deck together maybe a couple of days before the Vassal Clash, and I didn't
Wow.
really
All right.
and I didn't really think twice about what I
Sure.
put in. So
Solid.
All right. Well, so the upgrades then we'll kind of run through those. We've got I think I see a few themes here. We've got survivability. We've got turning things into quarry. We've got some weapon bumps so that you can make sure that your skinks are doing things. And then maybe a little bit of offense, a little bit of mobility. So some of the standards, they're great fortitude and great strength. It's hard to find a deck that can't find a use for those. The You said there, I think I see four cards that will turn you into quarries. Four
Chorus,
cards
yeah.
that will turn you into a quarry. So impressive bulk, silent helm, silent sword, silent ring. If I missed anything, is that about right?
That's it, yeah. There's nothing else.
Okay. So those we know the helm is a great defensive boost, especially on something atrocious like Autopodal with a guard token in cover. That's enough to just say I'm not going to bother swinging.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
Dominant Defender and Silent Helm onto Autopaddle.
Mhm.
Oh, gross. um, the impressive bulk. You're fairly speedy and you're getting a lot of your mobility off of pushes. So the bulk is +1 wound, -1 move, but become a quarry, which can help you out with your lion weight.
Yeah, yeah.
And also heated instinct plays off of that.
Yep. And everything to prove.
That's right. Sure. The survivabilities here. There's dominant defender, and this is where if you're holding an objective, you're on guard, which is always solid. And then it has occasionally you'll manage to pick up primacy by rolling a crit or even maybe more rarely lose primacy if you already have it and you don't roll a success.
Yeah.
But relatively rare in my experience. Do you find those bottom parts of the card coming into play all that often, or?
Oh, when you put it on Otterpaddle, it's generally the crit that pops up, but
Yeah.
hardly ever. Well, yeah, once in a while you get the failed the failed defense.
Mm,
I don't really find that I hold the hold the primacy that often. So
right. Yeah. I distinctly remember having this reaction block a rip a bite, which I was counting on to get me back in a game. I think Spike Claw was standing on something. So not only did I not hit because he critted the defense, but I did not have my backup of the bite to follow up. So
Mm.
when this goes, this can sometimes be especially backbreaking because you lose your the other guy picks up primacy and it blocks a crucial reaction. So also, especially because that crit, not only have you defended, but I brought up the wolf bite, but that's the same window that is a lot of the after a failed attack action, make another attack action. So that can be a big swing on some real important attacks there.
yeah,
Um, you have one way that you can more reliably pick it up is Proud Runner, so +1 move, and then if you end 5 or more away from where you started, you can just grab primacy. So if you're not sitting on underdog, then you can just use this to scoop it up. I like this inclusion a lot in this deck.
also just trying to steal primacy at the end of the round.
Mm-hmm.
It's get
Yep.
that extra glory,
Mm-hmm.
to get that total glory for the deck up a little bit.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's that extra little bit to run does actually help out quite a bit to get to the other
sure.
side of the board, especially for Astromatrix alignment. But most of the everything else, I just need two objectives to score, so I can just hang everyone else if I need to
Mm-hmm.
um, in my own board, and have one person run off onto the other
Yeah,
board.
run around on the baseline. The There's unfeeling resilience in there, and this is reduced incoming damage by 1. Every warband we see this in, it's a really solid pick, and no exception here. I remember when this warband first came out, I was like, there's one guy you want it on, and that's Clacktrock. In practice, that has not been the case at all. Like Clacktrock certainly makes great use of this, especially once he's inspired. Then he's like defending on 2 block, and you're doing less damage. It feels terrible. But I've seen this go down, especially with your wound upgrades. You get a wound upgrade on Kishitaka or something, and have this, and all of a sudden it takes a couple of attacks to even get through Kishitaka, which feels real bad from the other side.
Yeah, and to deny the opponent, for instance, if you're charging a skink in there and their attacker does 2 damage, you chuck this on. It just helps deny that surge, or not surge, the primacy,
Yeah,
something like that.
right. And there's
But
definitely some decks out there that are counting on the ability to pick up primacy, or they are counting on having primacy at the end. So this gives them counterplay to that, making sure that they can't leverage those. There's one inclusion here, Heaven Blessed Weapon, which it's relatively rare to see. It's on range 1 attacks, +1 dice, and knockback 1 to that fighter's range 1 attack actions. This looks to be in direct competition with Augmented Limbs. Augmented Limbs being the +1 dice, but also turning somebody into a quarry. So here you're valuing knockback 1 over the quarry. Did you find knockback 1 was important, or what was the thought there?
Augmented Limbs is a really good card,
Yeah.
and the reason for the knockback is this. So when I longboard, I'll generally go the amber trap nest,
Mm.
and that's got the 2 lethals.
Mm.
So facing the other board. So basically, if a Rothcorn has to come in and charge through the 2 lethals to get to whoever he's going for, and where he charged Kixitaka killed him, for instance, I was able to put Heaven Blessed Weapon onto Clacktrock, and basically smack him for 4 damage. Although it didn't it didn't help much, because the next attack, which I had Silent Sword, I missed. And then the very next round, he drew Toughened Hide and
Oh yeah, and then it's
and some
done.
healing cards.
Yeah.
But that in that case, you could kill a 4-wound fighter really easily with that, because people don't tend to try and, I mean, when they charge in, they're not going to put themselves in a position to in front of a lethal, right? So they're going to try and put themselves somewhere else. So if you're charging Clacktrock around the corner to push them in a way that they gets them knocked back into the lethal, is really the point of that card. And that's it. Other than that, Augmented Limbs probably would have worked really well as well, because of the quarry mechanic addition.
Yeah, and to be fair though, you do have a fair amount of other sources of quarry in here, so that's pretty solid. We've talked about Silent Ring giving you that extra card draw, Silent Sword, and Soultooth Net. You talked about, I think Soultooth Net is a great pick. It's real nice into crushes. It's real nice into Hrothgorn, who you're expecting to see a fair amount of. So I think those are some great pickups. Any further thoughts on your upgrades here, or any edge case ones that you thought about but couldn't quite find the room for?
Probably any additional strength upgrades or any other wound upgrades. Scavenge Armor, for instance, but Scavenge Armor is, I guess, getting someone over to the other side, which generally I wasn't going there as often if I'm sitting back drawing cards. But yeah, Soultooth Net, when it works, it wins games.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, I think the 2 games, that I played Heretic in the Vassal Clash, that card, I think, won me both of those games. But I also played him in Straight Outta Shadespire. and the worst part of that is I Soultooth Netted him again, and also gave him a move token again in consecutive rounds.
Oh no.
With his Hrothgorn. So round 1 and round 2, he was basically immobilized.
He's just reliving the nightmare again.
And this was
Can't escape it.
I think he really hates that card at the moment. But I think that card won me that game as well, to be honest. So 3 games against Hrothgorn, all won with Soultooth Net, because the game ended on 17 all with me on an objective again.
Wow.
Yeah, you just figure a couple more activations from Hrothgorn, and he's probably got that difference of 1 glory there.
I mean, one round he was inspired, I think, and 1 round he could move, and he still scored 17 glory.
Yeah, jeez.
Pretty scary stuff.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, so Soultooth Net, was that something you had just included right off the bat, or was it something you sort of stumbled upon later on?
No, this has been since Barblade Net back in the day. I've always included something like this for the big boys, and for Crushers, for Rippers, for Hrothgorn, for Mollog. It just, if you've got Rippers and you Soultooth Net one of them, they lose an activation.
Yeah, sure do.
And it's frustrating. It's infuriating. Ask Heretic. It's really hard. It's really hard to play. I mean, what do you do? Your main breadwinner is immobilized.
It's the kind of card when it goes down, and if you got the one good one very important fighter on your side, and that card goes down, you just like start feeling that cold sweat. Uh,
Yeah.
but even said that, I really liked your comment about taking an activation off the board for Rippos, because often I've lost one of the Rippos, one of the Snarlfangs, and I'm like, well, I can still do a fair amount of work with two. I have a way to engineer, with a sidestep, I can get two activations out of Rippa, and Stab It's going to get me one more, and then a card like this brings you from three quality activations in a given round down to just two.
Mm.
Like, oh, that really stinks. So even if there isn't just like one world beater out there, it's pretty strong. Phil, what any thoughts, any questions about this? Any inclusions based on your experience?
I think these all make a lot of sense, especially getting impressive bulk in there. It's one I'm planning to put into my deck, as I need more quarry stuff. I haven't used Silent Sword yet, but maybe that one goes into. Um, One that I've been running for a while, and I don't know, maybe you've considered it as well, is Formidable Defense. So gives +1 defense, but -1 to your attacks. Um, any consideration there? I
That
think that
was
actually also makes you a quarry.
that card is always do I take it, do I not?
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, I went for the silent package and
mm,
the upgrades. The wound upgrades rather than the defense upgrades. So that
Right.
was the thinking. Silent helms, and I did want a little bit of. Oh, if I put silent sword onto someone, I didn't want them to lose an attack, for instance.
sure.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, but that card is it jumps in and out of my decks.
Yep. No, it makes sense. And then I think the only other one that I've been using that it's not seeing in here is Quickening Greaves, which I've actually found it to be less useful lately. I don't think that's maybe just because there's fewer distractions these days. Has that been your experience as well?
um, I totally forgot about Quickening Greaves, and that's one that I normally put into my objective holding decks. Um, but yeah, it's definitely one that it regularly jumps in and out of my decks as well. But yeah,
There's
it did make
yeah,
noise.
there's fewer distractions, and then also it's got the problem that you take that step after dells have happened,
Yeah.
so it's hampered in that way. I was putting in the Grimwatch deck and been happy with that, but that's because they have some abilities like the I want to blank on it now. There's the death card that is good for holding cover hexes in friendly
Mm,
and enemy, and then you take a damage or whatever. But there's a play case where you get to take that one step and it's still useful even if you don't get to delve. So
right.
I think that's something that works a little against that card at this exact moment. So
Mm.
Yeah.
uh, that's it. That's the deck. Any overall thoughts? I mean, it sounds like you played this deck and then a very similar deck at the straight out of Shadespire. Is there any changes you feel like you would have made, or obviously results speak for themselves? You're pretty happy with it.
Uh, yeah, probably not. To be honest,
Mm,
I I don't know. I don't actually know what I would change. I think if new cards came out, obviously I'd change. Balance the cosmic equation. Maybe I'll change that for something.
mm,
Uh, I don't know what though. Um, yeah,
sure.
Lion Weight would have been the one that I got rid of, but I scored it pretty much every time, probably.
Mm,
So you know, I think after the tournament, I feel better about it than before. So
that's cool.
um, I, I think all of the cards had their uses. So and they were
Sure.
all useful in some way over the game. So
Yeah. It'll
nothing
be
nothing.
interesting to see if a far list comes out how much, because you are currently only sitting on one restricted. The only restricted card in this deck is Proud Runner. So it'd be interesting to see if there's any additional work needs to be done after the FAR drops.
I'm sure everything to prove will be in there.
Yeah,
Scant resources, maybe.
I would be shocked if Contest of Equals doesn't get restricted. I think that's we're
That's right.
seeing
Yeah,
that
contest of
all
equals,
over the place.
possibly even astromatrix alignment.
So right, right.
But yeah, it'll definitely change. I would say.
So for the two of you as being Starblood players, if there's somebody who hears this and they're saying like, maybe I'll give these guys a spin, you got any advice to somebody if they really want to figure out how to crack this warband open, where they should focus their attention or their lessons learned?
Oh, I probably wouldn't start off with this deck as a new player.
I would agree with that.
It's yeah, with the skittish. I guess just learn how to use the skittish, and then obviously you're charging. When you're charging, charge to where you can skittish back onto objectives, and think about where you want to go after the charge, and things like that. So, but it just depends. Like the deck can be used in so many different. I mean, the warband can be used in so many different ways. If you want to hold objectives, if you want to be aggressive, if you want to be hybrid, it just depends on your play style really and what you like. But yeah, it's hard to give specific, I guess.
Yeah, I think I would say that like if you are going to want to try and play this warband, start first by deciding what playstyle you want to do, because that will then sort of give you that direction for how you want to figure everything else out.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you just go, okay, this deck won a tournament, I'm going to grab it, but then you don't realize that the playstyle needs to be more passive hold objectives, you're going to run into trouble.
Definitely.
So I think knowing your play style ahead of time is really important. Like we said, understanding how to use skittish, because it's not intuitive. There's a lot of weird tricks you can do with it. And so positioning ends up being, you have to be thinking a couple of steps ahead for the positioning. I think something that we maybe didn't talk a lot about, but is fairly obvious from looking at your cards, at least to someone who's familiar with how these guys work, is that your skinks are a resource. You can use them sacrificially, either just by dangling them out to your opponents for something like, hey, I know I need cards, so I'm just going to charge with a skink to set up Dark Sacrifice. Like that's a play where you can be doing it intentionally, but your opponent maybe doesn't know it. So learning how to like realize when that's the appropriate thing to do, I think is important. And then in a similar sense, Clacktrock, like he's your bruiser, but I found this actually, or learned this lesson, I guess, back from playing Eyes, is that your big bruiser doesn't have to be a big bruiser. He can just be a threat of being a big bruiser, right?
Yeah.
As long as he's there on the board, your opponent is threatened by it and will be distracted by it. So even if you don't really care what happens with Clacktrock, you can affect your opponent's game plan just by putting him forward. I've had plenty of games where people focus a ton on Clacktrock in rounds 1 and 2 to kill him. And I'm just like, great, good. Now I get to go hold objectives. Wonderful. You completely left my skinks alone.
I guess
so I think those are sort of my maybe easy rules of thumb for this warband. I think everything else becomes pretty hard to give specific.
Yeah, I think really, if you're going into a tournament of best of 3, you need to know the story of the deck, like you said. What is the story? What are you trying to do? Don't be aggressive in a passive deck, for instance. And the big things is choose your boards before the tournament. Know which boards you're going to place. How are you going to place your boards? What's your strategy going to be with a board? I mean, for me, I was always going to longboard everyone with Amber Trap Nest. That was my longboarding board. And what did I use? What was the other one? Soul Refractor as my defensive board. So because I'm playing a defensive game, Soul Refractor is my defensive board. I can use and manipulate the board to put fighters, where I want, so that, the blocked hexes can't attack. I'm pushing enemy fighters out of range so that they can't attack me around blocked hexes and things like this.
This Soul Refractor being the one with the 3 blocked hexes kind of arranged in a triangle in the middle. Is that
That's
the?
the one, yeah, and
Yeah, yeah.
especially if they ranged fighters, it just my skins can just hide around, run around those
Totally.
things. And my third board was Menace of Binding. It was basically a good longboarding board, or if I lost the last roll off, I'll use it as a front on board. Either way, there's the strategy. Know your strategy before you're going into the play. I'm going to use these boards automatically. I don't have to think, waste the time of choosing boards,
Sure.
during
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thing. And also, when you start understand the objective, I mean, the placement of objectives. Generally, I know amber, amber trap nest where the opponent's going to place the objective to put in be in the worst spot for me. So I'm already ready for that. I already know where I'm going to put my cover hexes in a sort of defensive position, possibly in a position where I can knock them back into a lethal or something like that if they come in. So all these little things just help speed up the game, I guess, and also knowing which hex is generally going to be for which fighter. It does change depending on the warband you're playing against, but you know,
Sure.
in general,
Yeah, I can say that again. I've talked a fair amount in the past few episodes about trying to learn Grimwatch, and that is one of the things I'm still weakest at as it comes to deployment, and I don't have that mapped out in my head. And frequently get to the end of deployment and be like, oh no, like I've messed up. Now I've got this fighter is out of position because I've used up all the spaces or some such, and I can feel that difference between a warband that I've played a lot and I have a really strong sense of where I'm going to want people and one that I haven't.
yeah, and it just saves you time during the tournament as well. Instead of thinking about it there, you kind of already know because you only got 90 minutes or whatever you got to
Right, right.
play, so you don't want to waste that time. I know I've you know played a couple of games, and then the last game you have to finish in 10 minutes, so you're rushing and you're making silly mistakes.
Sure. Buy yourself some thought cycles for the things that matter. So,
Exactly, yeah.
all
But
right.
apart from that, I guess, yeah, like you say, it's a bit hard to give specific details.
Sure. No, that makes sense. With the any straight out of Shadespire, we really focused on the Vassal Clash, but and we talked about was it Heretic getting to relive his Soul Tooth Net nightmares, but
is agony.
yeah. What any other notable moments that you can think about from straight out of Shadespire that you'd want to share before we close it up?
Oh no, it was really that. I think I did have some pretty close games against was it Mandaga's Blade Coven, and Iron Skulls,
Mm.
and Vel's Crushes. But he seems to have a curse against me of not rolling anything.
Rough.
So yeah, he gets mad every time he plays. Thanks, Vel. Shout out to Vel. But yeah, no, it was a good. Those straight out of Shay's pies are really one of the things that kept me going through and kept me in this game, because we don't really have much of a scene here in Australia, or in Perth at least.
Mm.
There's there's no one I play against. So yeah, it's at least some kind of competitive play
Mm.
that that it used to be every month, but now it's a little bit less. But yeah,
All right. Hey, Phil, any last thoughts here before we sign it off?
I don't think so. I think we had a good talk.
All right. Well, RG, it sounds like you're uh, a presence to be played online. People can find you on the Discords. You got anything else you want to shout out? Any projects or anything like that, or is that the place to find you?
Yeah, that's it. That's
Okay, sounds good. We are also on those Discords, or you can get us at WTHcast or whatthehexcast at gmail.com. Obviously, we're part of a greater Mortal Realms network, and you can check that out at themortalrealms.com. We'll have a link, actually. I just didn't mention it before on this episode, but we do have a survey out there. If you're a listener, we'd love your feedback. It's just kind of a gift you're giving us as a few minutes of your time, but it's really valuable to us. Give us a better sense of going forward. And we've got a lot of responses already. Really appreciate those who have. If you haven't, just take a couple minutes, click it in the show notes, and help us out. Really appreciate it. We want to say thanks to the Mortal Realms Network as a whole, and also to our patrons. I think we got a new one is Omni Ops is putting in, so that's pretty awesome too. Coming up will depend on what we see on the way. We've got a couple ideas, but we're always keeping an eye on the horizon for some black sails. See if the pirate ogre shows up, and we get to chat about him. In the meantime, we got a little recommended listening for you. It's Cold Blooded Angels. That's from Baroness from their Golden Gray. For What the Hex, I've been Davy.
This is Phil.
This is RG.
And we're already recording, so we don't need to worry about that.